Hello, everyone. Welcome to Medicine and Miracles. I'm your host, Dr. Scott McMahon. I've been a board-certified pediatrician for over 30 years. I've specialized in the diagnosis and treatment of CIRS for nearly 15 years. CIRS, or CIRS, is short for Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome. It's a mystery illness to many doctors, but it can affect any part of your body. Now, I've evaluated 2,000 patients. I published 10 articles, co-written a CIRS medical textbook, given 50 presentations at medical meetings, and testified as an expert in 10 United States and 2 other countries. But I'm also a man of faith, and I followed Jesus for over 30 years. I'm an ordained minister. I pastored a church. I've written a book on spiritual warfare, and I've been on 15 international mission trips where I either was doing medical work or preaching. So this is Medicine and Miracles. We're going to talk some about medicine and science. We're going to talk some about faith and some of the miracles that I've seen over the years. Some people think that medicine and faith are incompatible subjects, but I'm going to show you that that thinking is not true. Medicine, miracles. Medicine and miracles. It's going to be great. So let's dive in. Now, anybody who's ever watched a police procedural like NCIS has seen a coroner evaluating a crime scene where there was somebody who had died. And based on their evaluation, they can actually estimate the time of death using the clues that they develop. Today, we're going to discuss what happens to somebody's body as they die. Now, dying is a process, and for some, and for others, it's pretty immediate. So the circumstances do matter. For instance, if you're dying slowly, gradually from heart failure, then this process is going to look different than somebody who got killed, unfortunately, in an accident, got killed instantaneous, because another car hit him. But the basic processes are the same. Now, the most important change that occurs as you're going through dying is that your heart will stop beating. And when the heart stops beating, you stop sending blood to the rest of the body. And that blood brings oxygen to your different tissues. It also picks up waste products. It shares the warmth from the center of your body and can cause other things to happen. So when the blood stops circulating, some of the processes that stop include blood flow and its nutrients. You get a decrease, or you get a cessation of energy production at the cellular level. You stop producing heat in the core of your body, and you stop transferring that heat from the core to your hands and feet and everywhere in between. And as a result, when the heart stops, you can't find a pulse anywhere. This is a radial pulse. You can't find it there. This is a pulse at the carotid artery. You can't find it here. Apical, which means you're feeling right over the heart itself, you won't feel anything there because the heart's not beating and the blood's not pumping. Now, as a result of that, people will become pale. And, it doesn't matter what your skin color is. It's more obvious if you're Caucasian, but everybody becomes pale and the lips become pale. They may even become white. The fingernails become pale and your skin in general becomes pale. So that's one of the things that we see. And also people become cold, again, because the warmth of the core of the body that's sent to the outside parts of the body isn't happening anymore. So you get cold, and this can start in just a few minutes. And eventually the whole body will become room temperature because you don't have any process that makes you warmer than. And these things will allow a coroner to try and estimate the time of death. And then another thing that happens is that the blood, because it's not being sent around the body, it will pool in gravity-dependent areas. Well, what do I mean by gravity-dependent? Well, if you're laying down on your back is gravity-dependent. Your buttocks are gravity-dependent. The bottom of your legs are gravity-dependent. And so that's where the blood will pool. If you're laying on your stomach, it'll be the complete opposite. Now, another thing that happens when people stop living is that they stop breathing. And as a result of that, you don't see their chest rise. Do you see my chest? You might not be able to see it on camera, but my chest goes up every time I take a breath in, and it goes down every time I exhale. Well, you won't see that happening because they're not breathing. And another thing that we see in the movies is sometimes someone will take a mirror and put it next to somebody's nose or mouth to see if there's any perspiration, because there's water in our breath. There's some degree of humidity there. And when we breathe onto that mirror, you might see some of that water condensating. But if you're not breathing, you won't see that. And then another thing that happens is that your muscles at first will relax and you'll be really floppy because there's no blood flow to there. There's no energy production going on in cells. And because there's no energy production, there's no contraction of those muscles that require energy to do that. Okay. So just going through those basic kind of changes leads us to understanding what the law enforcement people call the 4 stages of death. Well, probably medical people that call it that, but coroners are medical people and they're law enforcement people. So those 4 different stages are called pallor mortis. Mortis means dead, right? Algor mortis, that's ALGOR. Rigor mortis, RIGOR, and livor mortis, LIVOR. And those different 4 stages describe the things that we've already kind of talked about. But let's go into a little more detail, and then you can be like a junior coroner next time you see one of your favorite TV shows. So pallor mortis, pallor has to do with being pale, is the first visible sign. And this usually occurs within about 15 to 25 minutes. And that means that the dead person becomes pale or whiter on their skin, their lips, and their nails. Algor mortis means that you're starting to get cold. So also in about 15 to 20 minutes, but then over a process over that occurs over like 18 hours, you see someone get cold. So initially they'll get cold to the touch, okay, particularly on the hands or the arms, maybe on the feet or the legs. So cold to the touch. And then over the next 18 to 20 hours, their temperature internally drops about, I think it's about 1 degree Fahrenheit every hour. And so based on that fall, assuming you're not outside and it's not 37 degree weather or something like that, but if you're in a regular kind of heating, you should see that drop about at 1 degree an hour. So when you're watching, again, your favorite police procedural, and you see the coroner stick a thermometer, plunge right into the patient's chest, they're checking the core temperature, and they're going to compare that to what the external temperature is. And that will give them an idea of how many hours the body has been dead. And they can estimate the time of death from that. Now, rigor mortis occurs about an hour or 2 after death, and it also is a process. Now, again, I told you that the muscles are originally relaxed. They become loose and very bendy. But after a while, they start to tighten up, and that's after about an hour or 2. And it'll take somewhere around 6 to 8 hours for them to do that. And it'll start in the face, and then it'll go more toward the body. And the reason for that is that the cells in the body need energy to stay intact. What I mean is the cell has a membrane around it that keeps all the cell goop inside the cell. And if you're not making energy, you can't maintain that. And so it breaks open, and all the nutrients and all the chemicals and everything that were in the cell now ooze out. And because there's no blood flowing, they don't go anywhere, but they stay in that general area. And if that general area is the muscle, then the free floating calcium that used to be inside the cell is now outside the cell. And that can trigger the muscle fibers to contract and get really rigid. So that occurs, again, starting around 1 or 2 hours. It can last up to 12 to 24 hours before rigor mortis is completed. And again, that timing can help the coroner determine what the time of death is. And then finally, there's livor mortis. Now, that's not your liver. Okay? That has to do with the pooling of blood that occurs because there's no circulation going on. starts about an hour after death, and it's usually fixed by about 8 hours. And again, can be used to help determine the time of death. Now, on medicine and miracles, we usually talk about life. Today, we discuss the signs of death because we have a very special miracle to share with you. But as we segue into the miracle, don't forget, if you're interested in CIRS, we have lots of free videos at www.cirsx.com and a list of treating professionals that you can find at www.survivingmold.com. But I don't think you're going to find any videos about what we're talking about today there, because again, we talk about life usually. Now also, I got to tell you this, the next Surviving Mold /CIRSX annual meeting will be held in Tempe, Arizona. It's going to start on June 5th and it's going to end on June 8th. It's going to be fascinating. We're going to have speakers who talk about medical things, speakers who talk about indoor environmental kind of things. We oftentimes have lawyers who are there, and we also have talks that are specifically for patients. So if you're interested, find out more at www.cirsx.com, where they have the super early bird special going on right now. Okay. In previous episodes, we've talked about healing miracles. We talked about a uterus growing abnormally. We talked about pain that stopped instantly. We talked about financial miracles and more. But today, we're really going to blow your mind. On October 6th, 2024, about a month ago, I was at church in the pre-service prayer meeting. There were 18 people at this meeting, and we were praying from 9 to 10 a.m. The service starts at 10:30. So at 10 a.m., people start to leave. But while we were praying, we prayed about the service, about the community, about the pastor, about the word that was going to come forth, about the presidential and the upcoming elections. And we were praying for the church to witness signs and wonders and manifesting, not just at our church, but in the body of Christ throughout. Now, the meeting ended at 10 and almost everybody left. And there was a man that I noticed at about 5 minutes after 10. He's in his 80s, and he was just sitting in his chair, his palms up, his hands were on his two legs. And I thought he was just praying deeply. Apparently everybody else did, because everybody left him there, including his wife. So we all left, and he was the last one there. I went upstairs. I fellowshiped with a couple people. I had some friends who were going to go to Africa later that day. And so I prayed over them because I'd been to Africa a bunch of times. And then at about 10:30, as the service was just getting ready to start, the associate pastor came and asked me to come downstairs and evaluate this man. And there had been another woman who had been at that prayer service, and she noticed that he was not moving, and she tried to arouse him, and it didn't work. And she found the assistant pastor, and he tried to arouse him, and nothing happened. So they came up and got me. So I had remembered seeing him kind of not moving, but still looked like he was breathing, looked like he was okay, thought he was praying, like 25 minutes earlier. And I just started praying immediately because they said he wasn't doing very well. So we went downstairs. That woman was already there. The assistant pastor and I are looking at him, and I start to assess him. And, that's what doctors do. I want to see where he's at. And so I looked at his lips. They were not just pale, they were white. I looked at his fingertips. Okay. Now, usually you can press on the fingertip and you can see the blood leave and the blood come right back. That's the way it's supposed to be. His fingernails were white. His skin was cold, and he wasn't breathing. And I checked it, a radial pulse, nothing. I checked a carotid pulse, nothing. I put my hand on his heart, nothing. This man was dead. And based on the analysis that we went through a few minutes ago of all those different kinds of mortises, I would say he was dead somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. So he was dead. Didn't stink yet, because that happens after a few days, but he was dead. I called his name sharply, nothing. And while I've got my hand on his chest, and we're all kind of silently praying in the spirit. I'm getting ready to tell these other two people, and apparently other people had shown up between them, but I didn't know that they were in the room. I was getting ready to tell them that he was dead, that we needed to start doing CPR, that we needed to call 911, and that we just needed to start praying for him that he would come back to life. I mean, that's what I was getting ready to say. And as I was getting ready to say that, this man went, and I can't even do it right. I mean, that's not even deep enough. He took this humongous breath, like what you see on the movies when they're trying to simulate someone came back to life. And he took that kind of breath, and then he started breathing after them. We called 911. Within a few seconds, he had a carotid pulse, but no radial pulse yet. Within another few seconds, he had a radial pulse. It was pretty weak and thready. And he had an apical heart rate that I could feel of about 60. And he was still kind of out of it. Within the first couple minutes, ambulance arrived. And the first ambulance or EMT came in and said, let's move him off the chair so we can do CPR. And so we did that. And it took a few more minutes. And then he started moving his fingers. And then his eyes started opening. And then he was able to start answering questions. In the meantime, his wife of 62 years. Wow. Can you imagine being married for 62 years? In the meantime, his wife of 62 years made her way downstairs. It was difficult for her because she uses a walker. And she got down the stairs and she started giving the EMTs some medical advice and whatnot. And during this time, the EMTs are assessing him. They did his blood pressure. It was pretty low. It was 69/49 with a heart rate about 64. And they did a blood sugar to make sure that he wasn't going into some sort of diabetic coma. And his blood sugar was 184, which is actually on the high end. Not too high that you might go into a coma, not too low that you might go into a coma. His oxygen saturations were low, but they were climbing. His color was returning to his face. And the EMT said that they wanted to start an IV on him and take him to the hospital. And he started talking. He says, no, don't start an IV on me. I'm fine. What? Anyway, over the next 15 minutes, he became fully cogent. He was oriented ×3. And what that means is he knew his own name. He knew what where he was. I mean, very precise detail of where he was. And he knew what day of the week it is. That's what we mean when we say he was oriented ×3. He was oriented ×3, but he couldn't sit up under his own power. So people helped him up to sit up, and his blood pressure was still low. It was 90/55. Normal is like 120/80. We expected that he would be dizzy or lightheaded because his blood pressure was so low, but he denied that he was. And after about 10 minutes of sitting on the ground and people trying to convince him that he needed to go to the hospital with EMTs, he just kept saying, no, no, no. And he stood up under his own power. And then he walked up the stairs, found his normal seat where he sits, and he sat for the rest of the worship service. Glory to God. And after the service ended, the man went home and cooked supper for his wife. And then later that day, he was talking with his wife, and they agreed that maybe they should go to the hospital to see if there was really something wrong, something that, precipitated this event from happening. And they went to the ER and they spent 5 hours there and they found nothing. They did imaging. They looked at his brain. They looked at his heart. They did an EKG. They did all sorts of blood work. They found nothing. Now, they kept him for another 3 days to see if he was going to do something like that. They actually kept him in the hospital. And over those 3 days, nothing. He was fine. They couldn't find anything abnormal on his evaluation, and he did great. And he's alive. And I've seen him several times after that. I was wondering if maybe he would have some I saw the light experience or something like that, but he doesn't remember anything. And not only that, but even during those minutes where the EMTs were asking him questions and he was answering them correctly and showing he's oriented, he doesn't remember that either. the first thing he remembers is walking and kind of going up the stairs to go to church. Wow. Glory to God. Amazing. Oh, I've never seen anything like that. And I was blown away. Now, we always, at Medicine and Miracles, we end on kind of an uplifting note. So today's uplifting thought for you is it's better to give than to receive. Now, as adults, we know that to be true every December when we see these little kids that just have like seemingly perpetual anticipation of the gifts that they're hoping to get at Christmas time. And not everybody celebrates Christmas, and that's cool, but you just know that that's a time of season where kids are just in expectation. Now, the kids focus on receiving gifts. But adults, having hopefully matured some, we focus on the giving. And our reward is complete just watching the joy of children as they receive. Right? It's the same at birthdays and other times if you celebrate birthdays. Now, indeed, that is the reason and the spirit of the upcoming Christmas season. God gave the very best gift that he had to all of mankind. And that gift, so that there could be peace on earth. Now, we haven't seen peace on earth yet, but it's coming and it's promised to us. And every Christmas story needs an Easter revelation. The gift that God chose for us and gave to us also chose to die for us and take the penalty for our own lifetime of bad decisions, bad behavior, and sins. And if we'll just accept our true condition and receive that gift, well, then we're invited to live forever with God, even after this body develops livor mortis. Isn't God good? Isn't that a reason to celebrate today? Well, this has been Medicine and Miracles. I always want to say miracles in medicine because I think they're both important, but I love the miracles. Anyway, thanks for joining us. If you liked what you saw or you learned something new today, please hit like and subscribe and join us again for our next episode of Medicine and Miracles, where you find the mysteries of the human body intersecting with the unsearchable God. Thank you for joining us. God bless you. We'll see you soon.